Syracuse, a fisherman, was pulling his nets through the water when he unexpectedly discovered a woman tangled in them. Upon closer examination, he found that she was still alive. Quickly, he pulled her from the net and gave her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. After helping her expel the water from her lungs, he informed her that she was alive, but she seemed unable to believe it, expressing that she had thought she was dead. He wrapped her in a blanket to warm her and insisted on taking her to the hospital. She was adamant, claiming she was fine and rejecting the idea of seeing a doctor. As a boat passed by, she ducked, making sure not to be seen. When he asked her name, she replied that she didn't know it. He assumed she must have suffered a head injury, causing memory loss. He introduced himself as Syracuse, but mentioned people called him Circus, hinting at his clownish nature. Understanding her reluctance to be seen, he took her to his late mother's secluded house. There, he offered her his lunch and asked if she would be okay alone. Surprisingly, she assured him that she would be fine, though he still left. Later, Syracuse went to his ex-wife's house to pick up his daughter Annie for her dialysis. Annie, who was disabled, required help to move around. Syracuse asked if anything unusual or wonderful had happened to her recently. She wondered why he always asked this, and he explained that he hoped something remarkable would occur during her dialysis. Annie requested a story, and he told her about a fisherman who had found a woman in his net. She asked if the woman was a mermaid or a selkie, but Syracuse couldn't say for sure. He then arranged for an automatic wheelchair for her to use and took her back home. His ex-wife informed him that Annie needed a kidney transplant but that the doctor had not yet found a match. Returning to the mysterious woman, Syracuse was surprised to find she was still at his mother's house. When she asked why he was surprised, he admitted that he had been unsure if the whole thing had been a dream. He went fishing and, after some time, the woman asked if she could join him. Initially, he hesitated, claiming it was bad luck to have a woman on a boat, but he eventually changed his mind. They set out together, but Syracuse struggled to catch anything. He asked the woman if she remembered her name, and she replied that he could call her Ondine. Syracuse asks Ondine about the song, and she explains it's the name of a woman from the sea. As she sings beautifully in an unknown language, Syracuse pulls up a cage from the water, finding lobsters. He tries again with another cage, which comes up empty, and asks her to sing again. This time, when he pulls up the cage, it's filled with lobsters. Realizing her song brings him good luck, he teaches her to tie the lobster claws. She asks if he usually catches this many, and he admits it's rare. Syracuse plans to sell the lobsters in town, and Ondine will get her share for singing. However, she refuses to go with him, saying she doesn't want others to see her. He points out that he has seen her, but she says he's the only one allowed. Syracuse sells the lobsters and buys a dress for Ondine, even stealing some women's underwear. He visits Annie at school and continues the story he told her during dialysis about the mysterious woman from the sea who sings to bring lobsters. Annie suggests she could be a selkie, a mythical creature that sheds its seal coat on land. She believes the song is how Ondine communicates with sea creatures. When she asks who the fisherman is in the story, Syracuse admits it's him and that he made it up for her. Annie isn't fully convinced and follows him as he leaves. Syracuse arrives at his mother's house, finding Ondine trying on old shoes but struggling to tie them. He finds it curious. He gives her the dress he bought, and she kisses him in gratitude. He asks how long she will stay, and she says it depends on him. He replies that if it depends on him, she can stay forever. Meanwhile, Annie secretly watches them and decides to research selkies to understand what's going on. Later, Syracuse goes to the church to confess. He admits he's been sober for years, but his wife still drinks, and he wants to get his daughter away from her. The priest suggests counseling, but Syracuse refuses, also admitting to stealing women's underwear. The priest is concerned, but Syracuse continues to explain Ondine's story. He refuses to tell the priest where she's staying, promising to keep him updated on any developments. Ondine tries on the stolen underwear, but chooses not to wear it, instead swimming freely. As she emerges from the water, Annie is there and tells Syracuse she knew he hadn't made up the story. Ondine, she believes, is indeed a real selkie. Ondine realizes that Annie is Syracuse's daughter. Annie asks if Ondine has magical powers and if she can help her feel better. Ondine inquires about Annie's condition, and Annie reveals she has kidney failure. Annie observes that Ondine feels cold and suggests it's because selkies belong underwater. Ondine, not understanding, denies this, but Annie, having researched selkies, insists they shouldn't hide the truth from each other. She explains that selkies can live on land for 7 years by burying their seal coats and will cry 7 tears during that time. Afterward, they can find happiness with a landsman. As Annie prepares to leave, Ondine kisses her and says she looks forward to seeing her again. Annie notices that Ondine's cheek is wet, realizing she has already shed one of the 7 tears. Meanwhile, Syracuse goes to the library to check out books on selkies but finds that Annie has already checked out all of them. He then offers to take Ondine fishing again, but she says she'll only go if he promises to be the only one to see her. He agrees, and while they're fishing, a patrol of fishermen passes by. Ondine hides, steering the boat with her feet, which catches Syracuse's attention. As she sings, Syracuse unexpectedly catches several salmon, which surprises him since salmon are typically caught with a gill net, not by trolling. The patrolmen board his boat to inspect his equipment and notice Ondine hiding. They comment that it's not illegal but unusual to have a girl on board and leave. Ondine realizes they'll gossip, so hiding is pointless. Syracuse and Ondine arrive in town, where people stare at her. He tells her that in a small town like this, someone as beautiful as she is attracts attention. He takes her shopping, and as she tries on clothes, a crowd gathers outside. Meanwhile, Syracuse and Annie discuss how Syracuse found Ondine near Seal Rock, which makes sense since she's a Selkie. Later, Annie admits to Ondine that she can't swim. Ondine offers to teach her, but while they're in the water, Ondine notices something and quickly pulls Annie out. She dives in and retrieves a hidden object, which Annie believes to be Ondine's seal coat. Ondine confirms it and suggests they bury it so she can stay on land for 7 years. They bury the coat, and Ondine makes Annie promise to keep its location a secret. Later, the three of them go out to sea, and Annie explains to Syracuse that Ondine can live on land for 7 years unless her Selkie husband claims her. Ondine insists, however, that she isn't a Selkie and asks Annie to stop with the myths. A mysterious, dark-haired man arrives in town, searching for someone specific. Annie tests Ondine's claim of not being a Selkie by jumping into the water. Ondine immediately follows and saves her, confirming Annie's suspicion. Later, Syracuse brings Annie home, and her mother mentions that the dark-haired man has been asking about Ondine but is using a different name. At home, Ondine asks Syracuse why people call him Circus the Clown. He admits he once drank heavily and did foolish things. When she asks what made him stop, he shares a painful story about finding Annie unconscious and her mother drunk. He decided that one of them had to take care of Annie, but his wife kicked him out, and the government denied him custody. After this revelation, they make love. Syracuse later goes to church to confess, expressing his fears about Ondine bringing him hope and luck, but he's uncertain about what the future holds. Outside, the dark-haired man confronts Syracuse, asking about the woman he found in the ocean, but Syracuse refuses to answer. That night, Ondine wakes up to headlights outside and realizes the dark-haired man is close. She runs away to hide. Meanwhile, Syracuse picks up Annie from her dialysis appointment, but when they arrive at her house, it's locked. The keys are with his wife, who is at a bar, so he reluctantly leaves Annie with her. When Syracuse gets home, he finds the house in disarray and worries about Ondine. He searches for her and finds her hiding. She tells him that the Selkie husband, mentioned by Annie, has come to take her back. Syracuse asks why she can't tell him to leave, but she explains it's not that simple. He jokingly suggests she wish him away, but she instead wishes for Annie to be healthy, and Syracuse wishes for Ondine to stay with him forever. Meanwhile, Annie's mother, drunk, crashes her car into the dark-haired man's. Her boyfriend, Alex, is ejected and dies. Syracuse and Ondine rush to the hospital, where the doctor reveals that Alex was a tissue match for Annie, so they proceed with the transplant. Afterward, Ondine meets the dark-haired man, and their conversation reveals they're both involved in something illegal. Syracuse attends Alex's funeral and pushes his ex-wife's wheelchair. She insists he have a drink for Alex, and despite his reluctance, he drinks. She then tells him that Annie should stay with him, but he must get rid of Ondine, as she brings good luck at first but eventually brings bad. Syracuse, overwhelmed, ends up drinking an entire bottle. Syracuse arrives at the boat heavily intoxicated and takes Ondine to Seal Rock. He sits her down and pretends to go for another bottle, but he's actually leaving her alone. Ondine expresses a desire to say goodbye to Annie, but Syracuse dismisses it, saying their kinds don't belong together and that she should stay there, singing to the seals. Later, Syracuse wakes up in a tree, and the father helps him down, telling him that he's terrible at accepting good luck. The father explains that misery is easy, but happiness requires effort. Syracuse later picks up Annie from the hospital and brings her home, where Annie asks about Ondine. He tells her that Ondine's sky husband came and took her. Annie insists that Ondine will return, as something of hers is still there. Syracuse asks what she means, but she doesn't explain. Later, while watching TV, Annie sees a band performing a song that Ondine sang on the boat. Syracuse recognizes it as a real song, which makes him realize that Ondine isn't a Selkie but a real person. He rushes to Seal Rock to confront her. He demands the truth, and she reveals that she is a prisoner and drug mule from Romania. The dark-haired man, Vladik, was with her when they were caught by the Irish Coast Guard, and he forced her to take the drugs and swim away. Although she is a strong swimmer, the Irish waves drowned her, and that's when Syracuse saved her. She then reveals that her real name is Joanna, When Syracuse and Joanna return home, they find Vladik and his accomplice already there, threatening to kill Syracuse and Annie unless Joanna reveals where the drugs are hidden. Joanna leads them to the place where she buried the drugs, only to find that they've been moved. Annie admits that she moved the seal coat, not wanting anyone to find it, as it would force her to leave. Joanna promises that she will stay if she reveals the location of the coat. Annie eventually admits that she put it in the lobster pot. The group heads to the boat, and as Vladik pulls the lobster pot up, Joanna uses the rope he's standing on to push him and his accomplice into the water, where they drown. The police arrive and take Joanna into custody, while Syracuse and Annie head home. Syracuse goes to the church again to confess. He reveals that Joanna is due before a judge next week and will be deported because she's a non-national. However, if she becomes a national, she can stay, but someone would need to marry her. The father smirks, suggesting that Syracuse may be the one. Later, Annie helps Joanna into her bride's dress, while Syracuse dresses in a fancy suit. The three of them head to the boat, where all the fishermen in town watch as Syracuse kisses his beautiful sea creature bride-to-be,